For decades, the United States and Canada have danced a delicate tango in their trade relations, oscillating between moments of harmonious collaboration and sharp confrontations that often feel more like a shoving match than a partnership. At the heart of this enduring friction lies the softwood lumber industry, a sector that might seem mundane at first glance with its images of towering pines and buzzing sawmills, but one that underpins vast swaths of both economies. It's a story of interdependence, where the flow of wood across the border isn't just about commerce, it's about building homes, rebuilding communities after disasters, and sustaining jobs in rural towns from British Columbia to Maine. Yet time and again this vital artery has been clogged by accusations of unfair practices, leading to a cycle of tariffs that benefit few and burden many. Consider the latest chapter in this saga, unfolding under President Donald Trump's renewed administration. In August 2025, Trump escalated tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber to nearly 35%, framing it as a bold strike against what he labeled as Canada's dumping of cheap wood into the American market. But let's pause here and unpack that claim, because in the world of international trade, words like dumping carry weight. They imply predatory pricing designed to undercut competitors. The reality, however, paints a far more nuanced picture. Canada isn't flooding the U.S. with subsidized lumber to sabotage American mills. Instead, it's fulfilling a demand that the U.S. has long relied upon. Nearly 70% of the softwood lumber imported into the United States originates from Canada, a supply chain meticulously forged over generations to support everything from booming suburban developments in the Sun Belt to urgent reconstruction efforts in wildfire-ravaged regions like California. Trump's rhetoric, delivered with his characteristic flair during press briefings and social media blasts, suggested that this was a straightforward win for American workers, a protectionist shield against foreign exploitation. Yet the numbers and expert analyses tell a deeper, more cautionary tale. The U.S. possesses abundant forests, teeming with the raw materials needed for lumber production, but it lacks the infrastructure to ramp up output overnight. Sawmills across America are operating at near full capacity, and scaling up would require not just investment but time. Experts interviewed on platforms like Fox Business estimate 5 to 10 years to build the necessary facilities and train a workforce. And that's assuming a loosening of federal regulations on forest access, a prospect mired in political gridlock and legal challenges from environmental groups and indigenous communities who rightly prioritize sustainability over short-term gains. This isn't abstract economics. The ripple effects are already washing over everyday Americans. With countervailing duties set to rise even further, combined with the ongoing Section 232 investigation, a tool Trump has wielded like a blunt instrument, the total tariffs could exceed 35%. As one industry insider put it during a heated discussion on cable news, Americans are about to discover the tangible impacts of these policies far beyond the confines of trade spreadsheets. Economists from reliable sources like Investopedia project that lumber costs could inflate construction expenses by 10 to 15%, a hike that hits hardest in vulnerable areas. In California, where wildfires have become a grim annual ritual, families desperate to rebuild face not only the trauma of loss but now steeper prices, prolonged delays, and diminished choices. Imagine a single mother in Paradise, California, sifting through the ashes of her home, only to learn that the wood needed for a new foundation will cost thousands more because of decisions made in Washington. This pain extends far beyond disaster zones. In the sprawling suburbs of Texas, where population growth demands endless new housing, developers are recalculating budgets and timelines, potentially shelving projects that could have provided affordable homes for young families. In Illinois, apartment complexes aimed at easing urban housing shortages are being reconsidered, their viability eroded by these artificial cost spikes. Trump, during his campaign rallies, often promised to tackle the national housing crisis head-on, vowing to build more homes and cut red tape. It's a pledge that resonated with voters squeezed by skyrocketing rents and unattainable mortgages. Yet, ironically, his tariff strategy now stands as a self-inflicted barrier, making new construction less feasible and exacerbating the very affordability issues he sought to address. It's a classic case of policy blowback, where the cure proves worse than the ailment, leaving constituents wondering if the protectionism is truly protecting them. Across the border, Canada's response has been a masterclass in strategic restraint. The forest industry isn't just an economic footnote in Canada, It's a cornerstone, employing tens of thousands and fueling regional economies from the Atlantic provinces to the Pacific Northwest. Faced with this latest salvo, Prime Minister Mark Carney, whose background as a former Bank of England governor lends him a reputation for cool-headed pragmatism, chose not to retaliate with fiery rhetoric or knee-jerk measures. Instead, he unveiled a comprehensive support package exceeding $1 billion Canadian dollars, designed to bolster the softwood lumber sector amid ongoing trade uncertainties. This isn't mere bailout money, it's a multifaceted initiative comprising loan guarantees, grants for product diversification, and targeted workforce support. Notably, $700 million of that sum is earmarked for small and medium-sized firms, the backbone of the industry, which have endured 8 years of volatility and need liquidity to weather the storm. But Carney's approach goes beyond financial band-aids. It's a forward-looking pivot that reorients the industry towards self-reliance and global expansion. Tying the aid directly to a new $25 billion federal home-building program set to launch in the fall, Canada is ensuring that its lumber doesn't languish in warehouses. Instead, it will be channeled into constructing affordable housing domestically, addressing Canada's own housing crunch while creating jobs and stimulating growth. The message resonates clearly. If the U.S. insists on unfair terms, Canada will generate its own demand, turning a potential crisis into an opportunity for innovation. This isn't defiance for defiance's sake. It's a calculated strategy that underscores Canada's economic maturity and unwillingness to be bullied into submission. One might wonder if the U.S. could simply pivot to other suppliers to fill the void. Nations like Germany or Sweden, known for their high-quality softwood exports. In theory, yes, but the practicalities reveal a stark shortfall. These European countries, while reliable, lack the sheer volume needed to replace Canada's contributions. U.S. mills, already humming at maximum output, have no hidden reserves to surge production. As British Columbia's Forestry Minister Ravi Parmar articulated in a recent statement, the consequences will soon manifest not in abstract trade figures, but in the everyday realities Americans face. Higher costs for wood, homes, and essential materials. Trump's hardline maneuver intended to project strength risks morphing into economic self-sabotage, alienating a key partner without a viable backup plan. Canada's composure in this standoff speaks volumes about its evolving approach to U.S. relations. With new trade missions dispatched to emerging markets like Vietnam and Japan, and a renewed emphasis on diversification, Ottawa is quietly building resilience. Workforce transition programs are in the works to support around 6,000 employees, not as a sign of industry collapse, but as a proactive step toward adaptation in a changing global landscape. As Canada forges ahead, the pressure subtly shifts back to Trump. Developers across the U.S. are voicing frustrations over ballooning budgets, consumers are bracing for pricier renovations, and the broader economy feels the pinch of inflated input costs. In this high-stakes game, it's not always the bluster that prevails. Sometimes it's the steady hand that keeps building brick by brick, or in this case, plank by plank. The lumber dispute is but one thread in a larger tapestry of U.S.-Canada trade tensions, which have entered a precarious holding pattern since Trump's August 1st tariff hike on select Canadian goods not shielded by the USMCA. This escalation, bumping duties from 25% to 35%, targeted a sliver of exports but carried outsized symbolic freight, signaling that even America's closest neighbor isn't immune to punitive measures. Provincial premiers in Canada, from Ontario's manufacturing heartland to Alberta's energy hubs, have floated ideas of retaliation, perhaps pulling American alcohol from shelves or tweaking procurement processes to favor non-U.S. suppliers. "We have to push back for sure," one premier remarked in a candid interview, echoing a sentiment rippling through boardrooms and union halls alike. Yet the federal response has been markedly subdued. Carney, addressing the nation in a measured tone, emphasized strength and sustainability. "Canada is strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. Building sustainably, building together, building positively, that's what we're going to do." There were no dramatic countermeasures, no immediate bans on U.S. bourbon or Harley-Davidsons as seen in past skirmishes. This restraint draws from hard-learned lessons of Trump's first term, when retaliatory actions against American products stirred political unrest in key U.S. states, pressuring lawmakers to seek resolutions. Ordinary Canadians, weary of the roller coaster, express frustration but not panic. polls show a public mood tilting toward long-term resilience over impulsive escalation, viewing Trump's tactics as more theatrical than substantive. Carney's refusal to ink a last-minute deal, unlike South Korea or the European Union, underscores a principled stand. He rejected a one-size-fits-all template that overlooked Canada's unique interests, opting instead for patience amid the noise. This defiance, delivered without fanfare, challenges Trump's expectation of swift capitulation. As former U.S. Ambassador to Canada David Cohen warned in a recent op-ed, blowing up a relationship as foundational as U.S.-Canada ties invites unforeseen consequences. Trust, meticulously rebuilt during the Biden years through joint defense initiatives and intelligence sharing, is fraying once more. Behind the scenes, Canada and Mexico are accelerating discussions on a Northern Corridor Agreement, a $120 billion infrastructure project aimed at streamlining trade between the two nations, potentially bypassing the U.S. altogether. This isn't saber-rattling, it's a pragmatic hedge against American unpredictability, signaling that allies are diversifying their options in an era of volatile leadership. Economists highlight that 95% of Canada's U.S.-bound exports remain safeguarded under the USMCA, minimizing immediate damage while preserving leverage for future talks. Trump's team, meanwhile, touts a 3% GDP uptick in the second quarter as evidence of robust policy success. But dig deeper, and the growth appears illusory. A technical rebound fueled by pre-tariff stockpiling rather than genuine expansion. Trump's boast of securing 200 trade deals by August 1st rings hollow. The tally hovers closer to 8, with Canada conspicuously absent. Each alienated partner chips away at America's global standing, leaving it more isolated in a multipolar world. The deadline drama further illuminates the capricious nature of Trump's trade playbook. On July 31st, the White House proclaimed August 1st as an ironclad cutoff. No extensions, no mercy. Tariffs would rain down on any nation sans a new deal. Yet, mere hours before midnight, Trump granted Mexico a 90-day reprieve, citing its unique border status and cooperation on migration and narcotics. Mexico is a very unique situation, a spokesperson elaborated, emphasizing shared security concerns. This rationale unravels when applied to Canada, which boasts the world's longest undefended border, over 5,500 miles of intertwined geography. The two nations are knit together by the USMCA, facilitating seamless trade in most sectors. Canada supplies the U.S. with over 4 million barrels of oil daily, dwarfing other foreign sources and bolstering American energy security, so why no grace for Ottawa? The administration's silence is telling. Trump's invocation of unrelated issues like Canada's Palestine recognition exposes the political undercurrents, tariffs as leverage for broader agendas, akin to his Brazil playbook. Mexico's exemption stemmed not from policy coherence but from its non-retaliatory posture. Canada, by contrast, held firm, refusing to rush a flawed agreement. In Trump's orbit, such steadfastness invites punishment, not negotiation. As Carney's team navigates this, they prioritize clarity and leverage, knowing that over 80% of exports flow tariff-free. Trump's quip about Canada being very poorly led belies the reality. Ottawa's composure may outlast the bluster. This episode echoes historical patterns in U.S. politics, where protectionism often promises quick wins, but delivers prolonged pain. Think back to the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which deepened the Great Depression by sparking global retaliation. Trump's tariffs, while targeted, risk similar escalations, alienating allies at a time when supply chains are fragile and inflation lingers. For Canada, the strategy is endurance, investing in diversification, bolstering domestic markets, and forging new paths. As one analyst quipped, dealing with Trump is like negotiating with someone whose cheese slips off the cracker unpredictably. Yet, Canada's measured response demonstrates that in trade wars, the victor isn't always the one who shouts loudest, it's the one who builds lasting foundations. Expanding on this, let's consider the human element woven into these policies. In rural Canadian communities where logging families have passed down traditions for generations, the tariffs feel personal, a disruption to livelihoods that extend beyond balance sheets. Workers in places like Quesnel, British Columbia, face uncertainty, yet Carney's support package offers a lifeline, funding retraining in sustainable forestry or emerging green technologies. This isn't defeatism, it's evolution, aligning the industry with global demands for eco-friendly materials amid climate change pressures. On the U.S. side, the irony is palpable. Trump's base, often in Rust Belt states hungry for manufacturing revival, may cheer the tariffs initially, but as housing costs climb, affecting everything from starter homes to senior living facilities, discontent brews. Builders in states like Florida, grappling with hurricane recovery, report delays that cascade into economic stagnation. The National Association of Home Builders has warned that each 1,000 increase in lumber prices adds over $400 to the cost of an average apartment unit. Multiplied across millions, it's a staggering burden. Historically, U.S.-Canada disputes have resolved through arbitration, like the WTO rulings that repeatedly sided against American duties on Canadian lumber. Yet, Trump's disdain for multilateral institutions complicates this, pushing toward bilateral arm-twisting. Canada's pivot to Asia-Pacific markets via deals like the CPTPP positions it advantageously, tapping into booming construction in Vietnam and Japan's prefab housing sector. Moreover, the northern corridor with Mexico isn't mere posturing, it's a visionary infrastructure play potentially linking Pacific ports to Atlantic hubs via rail and pipelines, reducing U.S. dependency. This could reshape North American trade dynamics, fostering a bloc resilient to Washington's whims. Trump's Mexico exemption highlights inconsistencies that erode credibility. By bending deadlines for optics, he undermines the tough negotiator image. Canada's refusal to fold, prioritizing national interests, exemplifies quiet strength, a lesson in diplomacy for an era of populism. As we look ahead, the standoff's resolution hinges on endurance. Trump may double down, but mounting domestic pressures, from builders' lobbies to consumer advocacy groups, could force recalibration. Canada, by building resilience, positions itself not as a victim but as a proactive player. In American politics, where trade often intersects with election cycles, this could influence midterms, with voters in border states feeling the pinch. Ultimately, this narrative transcends lumber and tariffs. It's about the fragility of alliances in a polarized world. The U.S. and Canada, bound by geography and history, must navigate these tempests with mutual respect. Trump's approach risks long-term damage, but Canada's steadfastness offers hope that reason can prevail, fostering a partnership that builds rather than breaks. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. In the art of statecraft, sometimes the most powerful move is simply to stand firm and keep constructing a better future.